quite a challenging little piece there, so we have to say, I think I might have turned it off. Did I turn it off? I touched something when I picked it up. All right. So we were talking about the Indian of Raimamus, B'Inyan Amalucha.
You didn't say the date?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. So this evening is the oil Ayin Kislev, Toshin Ayin, a shir in Ayin Beis Chelik Aleph, Dibur Amaschil, Vaidabe Elikim Kol Advarim Ha'ele, Shvois Tov Reish Ayin Daled, Tov Reish Daled Ayin, and it's on Omud Tov Ayin, Tov Shin Ayin, and it's Omud Tov Ayin. Going over onto Tov Ayin. So we began with the kasha that if we're going to say that the Ayin for Raimamus, by definition, means Ayin from Ayin Reich, Lagabi all the Makablim, and therefore the Makablim are B'emes Petelim, the Matthias, Lagabihem. What is the, or Lagabi the Raimamus Amitias? It wasn't the Chsaron from the spheres of Tuyo that they were Bechinas Raimamus. If they were Raymond, that should mean that they were Betelim, or upon him the Amshocha Mehem should cause Ayin for Bittul Amiti. Why was it that that Raimamus led to a Ayin for Shvira? That was basically the kasha we were dealing with. And so we got into, in this new Maimah, we got into Ayin whereby we saw that the Raimamus of Tuyu is as Asug in Raimamus, whereby the Zulus is Tefus Matthias. And since it's Tefus Matthias, then the Raimamus is Eina Yochel Lisbel, and therefore there has to be Mevatel, the Matthias of the Zulus. And we pointed out that was Be'emes our fault in the Etzem Raimamus, because Amitius of Raimamus is the Ayin Arich and the Isnasus of the Raimamus Amitius is such that everything is bottled by Matthias, and there's absolutely no Tefisas Mokim, or there's no Indian of any Matthias being a Matthias like Gabi the Goydel HaRaimamus. And if we're going to say that the Raimamus in Toihu was such that the other sphere was nearer to Matthias and therefore Mavalbul the Raimamus, well, that's a Hoichocha that the Raimamus is not a Raimamus Amitius, mitzad the emes together of Raimamus. Ella, that it's a Raimamus that it itself is B'chinas Matthias. And the Amitius of Raimamus of Elakus Lamaila, and the Indian of the Malchus of Elakus, and the Indian of Elakus, Malchus out is, Be'amitius are moving from Elakus, is that it's Davke not a Bechina from a Matthias Klau. No, it's Lamaila, Lagamri, Mikol Geda Matthias, no, it's a Indian from Atzmius, Atzmi Amiti, therefore it's completely Michutz Legeda. Shall call Matthias, or Baloshan HaRishonim, we say that Atzmus is Bechinas Matthias, or he's built in Matthias. Nimto, he's becoming not in that Geda. Therefore, everything is completely Ein Aroich. Anything which is Beged of Matthias, is Bein Aroich, Klau, Uklau, and is not Mavalul the Raimamus, or where the Raimamus itself is in a form of Matthias, and has a certain Hargosha of the Matthias Amarumam, then the Indian of a Matthias can be Mavalbuhim, because he's also Bechinas Matthias. that was basically the chilek that we got down to. And then we got in Ois Reish Lamed Beis to the beer, how it is in Atzilus, that the bittul of Olam HaTikun, which is Olam HaAtzilus, is a bittul ber etzem hametzias. And it's interesting, in the Kitzur we're going to see that the Rebbe calls it the Ayin von Hanochas Atzmusa, even though that wasn't, mamish doesn't occur here, but it's a bittul where there's absolutely no feeling of the eigene Metzias or the eigene entity, Klau, and that's because the oyer, which is Meir in Atzilus, is the Ayin for Reimamus Amitias from the Eibishter, and it comes from it's a Ha'ora from the Reimamus Atzmias of the Atzmas. Therefore, on Amud Tov Ayin Aleph, we went on to say that the Inyan of the Reimamus of Atzmas ain't safe mamish of the Atzmas of Boirei. We bow that he's not a Inyan from Matthias Klau. Therefore, he's the immediate Inyan from Reimamus Atzmi, meaning a Reimamus which is in the Etzem, not shy to any Zulus Klau Bentayim. And then we saw that there was a Inyan from Reimamus Atzmis mi Geders there, or Misugs there, also in the Giluyim. What Giluyim means, all the Eiris and the Giluyim which are Meirim Me'atzmas. And so we saw that the Eir Harishain, which is Meir Me'atzmas, is the Eir Amamish HaKol B'atzmusay. And there we wanted to say that that's also Reimamus Atzmusay, Reimamus Atzmi. Yeah, a Reimamus in the very Etzem, which is not shy to Reimamus Alazulas. At this point, Klau, and that's what we say daily in Dain Elam. We say Asher Mola Paterem Kol Yitzuniv Nivro. That before there was any gather of Nivro, it was also already a Inifan Dain Elam Asher Mola. Yeah, but Terem Kol Yitzunivro, and we said that Inyan from Molach means a melech bloyom, a melech where there's not yet the Inyan from Om. You know, what tried to say the Inyan of melech? No, we saw that was the Inyan of the Reimamus of the Etzem, which in this particular Inyan is called melech, but it's called melech Terem Kol Yitzunivro. So we'll soon maybe talk about that more as we go along. And then we put in brackets that also had in itself, since it was only a Gilui Me'atzman, it wasn't mamish the Amitis Reimamus Atzmias, therefore there was a certain Inyan of Reimamus Hamayla. But generally speaking, Reimamus Hamayla and Reimamus Atzmi are two differing inyanim, because Reimamus Atzmi means a Reimamus at the very Reimamus of the Etzem Mamish, Bliko Inyan of Maila. What you say Maila, that's got an advantage, you mean it has an advantage over some other Darga, or some other Inyan. And therefore, says the Rebbe, nonetheless, we do find that we could say the Oyer HaKol B'atzmusay has an Inyan from Maila over Shari HaGiluim, and therefore it's called a Reimamus, also mitzad the Inyan from Maila. And he brought the Raya from Tanya, where we say that the Oyer HaKol B'toich HaShemesh is an Anev Kal V'chema, that it's a Oyer Naila B'yesa, and he even calls it over there the union of the Alter Rebbe. Yeah, uses the expression that it's in Oven V'yesa Seisa V'yesa Oz, which meaning it's in a much greater madrega than the Oyer HaMeir Me'atzmas Mamish. Which means that there's a mile in that, like the miles Hameir. And Afal Pikain, we saw that it still has in itself the meaning for Reimamus Atzmiyas, because the Alter Rebbe finishes over there with the Lashon that really ain't a Oila B'Shem Oyer Klau. We only call it Oyer B'Shem Mushal of a Behemoth, it's not even Oyer Klau. But that's clear that the Alter Rebbe is using both inyanim. On the one hand, he uses a comparative Maila, the Ainu, the Maila that it's got like the Oyer Hamayir, and on the second, he's Choiza Kilo Loima, that has in itself also the Reimamus Ha'etzem, therefore it's Ainu Oila B'Shem Oyer Klau. Therefore, that's an interesting inyan that all the inyanim chutz mi'atzmas have in themselves both inyanim. They have a inyan from Roim Samayla of a koloi that they're still kolol or shayachim el urshel now tzimtzum boy from kloli, then they can still be called the inyan of Roim ha'atzmi. And then we wanted to say that in that gufa there are different dargis, and then we saw there's a ha'ora ha'meir from the Reimamis Atzmiyas, and we called that that's how it is. In the Atzmas, how it is koyram atzimtzum. The era Atzmiyim, koyram atzimtzum, well that's already in from Reimamis ala zulas. Now even though there's no zulas yet, and we're not really talking about zulas, but in the Atzmas, that's already the kilo the inyan of a Reimamis, which is giving place upon him. Behem shechayin and she in a Reimamis al hazulas. Dainu, that we have to say that's already in from kavona, that there was already a gila of a certain kavona in the still within everything till the symptom can be called kolo biatzmos. That there's already a certain kavona that ultimately that's going to be the from malucha. Therefore, that inyan of the spashtas areimamus alazulas, how it is betuich ha'etem, or that's called the inyan from the rotzen ano emle. That's given the lotion in Loshen HaKabbalah, the rotzen of ano emle, I will literally rule, even though there's no real rule yet, and there's no real inyan over whom to rule, but the hiseres of that rotzen, which eventually will give rise to the zulas, or eventually be shaykh to the zulas, or that's called the rotzen of ano emleich, and that's even though that's only a ha'ora v'spashtas, it still has in itself the inyan of Reimamis Atzmiyas. That's better where we were holding, and we saw that was the two inyanim of Kamosh Kosev b'Mokim Acher. That's where we're holding on Tov Ayin Aleph, about a third of the way down the page. Well, that's the two inyanim of Keser Malchus Ulavush Malchus. The Keser Malchus hu b'chinas Reimamus Atzmi shemanusa murumam bi'etzem or kamei hamelech hakodesh. All right, we saw B'terem Kol Yitzurnia Nivro in the inyan from Melech. It's the inyan from Kodesh who moved out completely. Ulavush Malchus hu b'chinas hareimamus al oelamas. Even though there's no oelamas and there's not even really any rotzen golui to the inyan from oelamas, but that's already Kamosh Mavur. Bahabi Makimis in Citizen, Kolo, the famous drush, which the Rebbe mentions here shortly, of the Samach to Samach, that Kaviyochel Lamaila, there's also, even in the Atzmi, the Eres Atzmiim, there's the two daggers of the Er Amuduli Atzmi, and the Er, which is Shayach al Choponim, Ayin from Machshova Kloli, so Efshorias, Hamshocha, Kilo Legabi Eilamad. As one on what he calls over there, the inyan from Yud K and Vav K, how they are in the Eres, Shalifnei Tzimtzum Legamri. Yud K is the inyan from Kilo was a Shayach Leyatzmai, and Vav K is already the inyan how Yitel Choponim a Machshova Klodius, which could include the inyan later of Oilamas. Kilo, it's Meir, or sometimes it's even called in Siddur Machshova Udibur, how they are Moke Harishon in their Kolo Biatzmusay. So there was the Rebbe Kamosh Kosev Hashem Moloch Geius Lo Beis. B'chinas Reimamus ve'isnasus Alam. It's Takye Geius Lo Beis. She's still in her even from Havdalah, but it's nonetheless the inyan of Lovesh. It's the inyan from Levush. In other words, that the inyan from Moloch has already been nimshach, whereas the inyan from Levush. And a Levush always indicates a dover, albeit a modud, lefi inyan ha'etzem. And Shayach and Magala the etzem, of an analyst, Levush and etzem are already dvorim, nivdolim zemizeh. Remember that the very fact that we call it Levush Malchus, well, that tends to indicate that it's already a kilo meir for the sake of something. Pink to say a mensch is loivish alavush, also for the sake of a yachas el azulas or a yachas el oelamas or kaitza b'zeh. Adafar, says the Rebbe, but also those two madrigas are the Koidem Tzimtzum. Upinus Malchus Ein Seif, or that Inyan of the Reimim is Alam, or that's the Inyan of Malchus Ein Seif, Kemoshul of Nea Tzimtzum, Sha'ola Beretzeinoi Ono Emloich. In other words, if Malchus the Ein Seif, still how he is, Koidem Hatzimtzum, is called by even Klole Ano Emloich. So even though it's only an Inyan from Lavush, it's not really any gather of Matthias Hanivroim or Matthias Mekablim from the Inyan of Malchus, but nonetheless it's called Lavush Malchus, and a little bit of Lavush, Rafi Inyan Ha'etzem, but it's already shy to the Inyan of Ano Emri. So Siba, and I have to get to the click at the edge there. Shehu Siba, or that rotzen Ano Emri, Shezeu Sibo ala rotzen Aposhut, She'ola Beretzeinoi Lahatzil Ulivroi, Mishum She'ein Mele Beloi. Ramir says the Rebbe, here it gets tricky. He said that from that Ano Emloich, which is Malchus Ein Sefer, is Koidem Hatzimtzum, there's Nimshek the Rotzen Poshut, She'ola Beretzeinoi Lahatzil Ulivroi. We have to say that Rotzen Poshut Lahatzil Ulivroi, well, that is already the Rotzen Sheleach Hatzimtzum. That's already the Giloi. The Rotzen Mamish Lahatzil Ulivroi, well, that's already practically dealing with how we're going to be Matzil and Boira. Matzil is the for Natzilus and the Elam Shalom Mila Meatzilus, and Boira is already the for Elam is B. Elam is B.A. So the Rebbe says that Rotzen is still called a Rotzen Poshut. I know that's a Madrege von Ak, the Madrege von Kesa Hakloli, how it is immediately after the Tzimtzum. But it could also be called Din van Kesser Deak, but also upon him that's already how it's a Rotzen Livroi. I'm sorry, Lahatzil Livroi. The Rotzen van Ano Emloi Koidem Hatzimtzum is a Sibo Lazet. Now we notice it twice here in the Hemshech of the Lashonis here. He said it's a Sibo. So it's going on the difference between Sibo and Iliva Olo Lamoshel. At Even Iliva Olo is a Even Hashpoel Bekiruv, and it's Nika, the kesher between the cause and the effect, as you might call it. That's not really the Emerson Pio of Iliva Olo. In other words, where things are like a mokia, one being what it is gives rise to the other, but Gilui, Bekiruv, that's called, it's not called a reason in the real sense. It's called like a mokia and a dova mishgalam. Of a sibu, the word sibu means a dova behavdola. If you say something is a sibu to something else, then you can mean it doesn't really have any direct mahustika kesher with that in it, but just being what it is. From that is kiru nigram, but even rochik, but even helomi, the fact that kach for kach eventually comes about. In other words, if it weren't for that, then it wouldn't be that. But not that they really have any error to the other. That's the whole meaning of a siba. And therefore we see that the Eibishter on Friday, we say in the Pasach Eliyahu, we say that the Eibishter is Ilah, say Ilah is v'siba, sibasa, asibois. What the Inim for Ilah say, Ilah does is Ishtaushelo. And that's the Inim where the Oiris and the Keilim and the Amshochas all have a certain error zelah. Aber Sibas, Asiba is das Inim von the Oir Achmi, but that's a Shurish Harishim von Seiva. In the meaning von Seiva, the Inyanim are not Mishtalso. They just sort of come out due to the fact that there is a Seiva. He gives rise to the Inyan Zeh. That's the Inim von Asiba. And therefore we find even in the world and in the function of Inyanim, sometimes a Siba doesn't necessarily have to do with a mahustika thing, with the Mesuvav, Mimena. It can be because something happened over there, then that something else occurred. Be a B'mochim Rochik, Bliko, Kesher, Mahusi, or Kesher Korev, a Linyan Zeh. If it hadn't been for that, then this wouldn't have been Mesorah, B'mochimacha, V'chulu. That's called a Siba. The Rotzen van Ano Emloich is a Siba to that rotzen liachaha a tzimtzum. Now, what do we say a sibuk? Because the tzimtzum is a even mamish. The tzimtzum harishon is mamish a even helem gomo. It's a even nistalchet. But all the miles, or I don't know if they're miles, but all the inyonim that we know in the inyan of tzimtzum harishon. And therefore, anything after the tzimtzum compared to koydem tzimtzum cannot really be described as a even ishtaushel, or gile b'derech error. And if perfrat in a inyan like rotzen, what rotzen is beklal, that it functions in an even from hell of a human. And if or that rotzen van anor emloich, or that's a sibur to the rotzen lahatil livery. Meaning, if it hadn't been for the rotzen van anor emloich, then there wouldn't be the rotzen van lahatil livery in the rotzen akloli achrei achimtum. But not that they're necessarily be'erach one to the other cloud. However, he says, Mishum she'ein mela b'loi om. In other words, I think he means with that lashon Mishum she'ein mela b'loi om means that there has to be some inyan koydem atzimtzum which al koponim bo'ifan richuk ha'erach, or he considers that there's going to be later the inyan am. And if the lashon kaviyachol is anor emloich, then emloich implies that there is a aon, because ein mela b'leom. And mamira the ein mela b'leom is here koilo both things. It's koidem the siba, and it's also kamuvan koilo the mesuva, because the mesuva has the inyan lilhachil v'livrei b'poyel. And if also in the siba, how it is koydem atzimtzum, and even from havdola adayin from the makablim, there also had to be that inyan from foreseeing upon him the inyan from am, albeit in an even for richel, and that's the inyan from ein mela b'loi. The rotzen zeh da anor emloi gam k'moi shehulef nei atzimtzum hari ze racha ora ubchinas is pashtes levad k'moi sheyadua beklal that koydem atzimtzum you have oiris atzmim or etzema oyer, and then in etzema oyer guf you also have madrigas, and then have a further level which is called is pashtes oyer. In other words, the whole clause of that oyer is called is pashtes legabi the oyer atzmi. If I remember this inyan from anor emloich is already shayked to the how it is bis pashtes. But afu pikein it's a is pashtes from that oyer atzmi. Therefore, it's got in itself still the inyan from atzmi. It's not a inyan which is and it's well known that every is pashtes has a certain inyan from me'ena amoya. It has in itself ike inyanim which are there in the etzem legabi that is pashtes. Therefore, even though it's only a ha'ora and a is pashtes, that's enough minel legabi what's eventually going to be the sibur to the rotzen livery of al chaponim. It's a ha'ora from the atzmi. Uki yadua to be atzmusay ubchinas oyer ashayach elo elamas. Like we just said, in the oyer ha'kol be'atzmusay, it's already there ashayach, or the even dibur with the different mashalim that we brought earlier. Ukamoish kosim mokim acher, but that's brought down in some Beis and other places. Ach, is it zeu is pashtes ha'ora mibchinas Harememes atzmi, the atzmi ain't safe. She'ena begera shaychus el ha'elamet. She'zeh b'chinas Harememes atzmi canal. Okamoi asher moloch b'terem ko. In other words, that's the Harememes atzmi is of the etzem ha'era. It's called in the atzmi. If we bow that this is a ha'ora, and he's pashtes, and now he's mavai hauser out of his pashtes, that it's already in the oil terem inyan atzimtzum, it's already the shaykhs to the elements, and therefore it's only a inyan from only from his pashtes and ha'ora, but nonetheless, it still isn't itself the meaning for Reimem as atzmis, despite the fact that it's already got a shaykhs to the inyan from element. That's what he said. It's as pashor mi b'chinas reimas atzmi. She'ena beget a shaykhs element. She'zel b'chinas reimas atzmi. Ukemoi asher molab Terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. So here we're like having our cake and eat it too. On the one hand we're saying that it's a Yin of Haneish Pashtas which is Shaychori to the Yin of Haneilamas, and yet nonetheless we're saying that when I get to the Reimamas Bedovo, Be'ika HaReimamas, it still preserves that Reimamas of the Atzmiyas. Favus, because it's a Ha'or Ve'is Pashtas from that Atzmiyas. Therefore, Mitzadish Pashtas Shaboy, it's only ready to become a Mokya to the Inuvanoid, or Al-Hoponim, not a Mokya, Cholila, but Al-Hoponim, it's got a certain getter of Shaychas Kloliyas to the Inuvanoid. Over here, he said, there's a Ha'or Funha, and a Mitis Atzmi, therefore it has in itself also Inyonim of the Atzmi, therefore it's got in itself the Reimamas Atzmusay Adayin, and it's got a ha'ora from the Asher Moloch B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. Shegam al zeh omru, even in reference to Asher Moloch B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra, Shegam al zeh omru Ayin Melech B'loi Om. Even there they say Ayin Melech B'loi Om. Pirush, the Pirush Ayin is Hain. Instead of Ayin, you have to read Hain. Hain Melech B'loi Sheyesh Melech B'loi Om. In other words, Ayin Melech B'loi Om is Hain Melech B'loi Om. That there is such a Ayin for Melech B'loi Om, and that she now is called in the Inna Atzmi, the Atzmi are called B'Atzmas. So I mean that's really, that's how they call it, pretty mystifying. That on the one hand he says Shegam Zeh Ne'ema Melech B'loi Ein Melech B'loi Om, and then he said, oh no, it doesn't really mean Ein Melech B'loi Om, but it means Hein Melech B'loi Om. Even in that Atzmias, Shekoidama, She'adayin Korol B'toich Ha'etzem, but that's the Reimamas Atzmi. As I thought the Shaila was, that's a very tricky little piece. What do I earn by saying that? Reimamas Atzmas Nimshach is Pashtas Ha'ora B'hinas HaRotzen De'ono Emrei Achamosh Ha'imrim HaMelech HaMareimom Levadei V'HaMishnasei De'mipnei Shehu Merumam Levad B'hinas Reimamas Atzmi Al Kein Hu Merumam U'Mishnasei Mimais Eilam V'Al Kein Gam HaRotzen De'ono Emrei B'hinas Reimamas Atzmi. So we keep sort of going back and forth, and we keep having our cake and eat it too. So what's it stickle with the Gambazer Imrium Ein Melech B'loi Om? We touch it not Ein but Hain, don't we, my son? Yeah. So ask us also Shaila, what's it here? This whole sort of, it's going and coming. Yes, it is Reimamas Atzmi, but it's only Shaykh Alam, but it's Reimamas, it's only his person, but it's his person. If you notice, the sentences keep like into swapping. They keep saying one thing, yet they go back to the other. So we have to say that really, this whole union of Malchus, how it is in the Etem, is a tricky union of, like we said, having your cake and yet eating it, and yet not having it. I don't know about eating it, so I had such a mistake, but also funny. Having it and yet not having it. Because the very fact that you say, Hadoin Oilam Asher Moloch, B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. So Enoch, you say that he's Moloch, B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. There wasn't anything. What the answer is, of the very fact that you say Moloch, he was already Kilo Ayin from Melech. So you say, oh yes, but it means Melech, how he really is a Melech only in himself. And then you come along and you say, oh yes, but that also means Hein Melech B'loi Am, that there is such a thing as a Melech without a people. And he says, V'gam zeh Ein Melech B'loi Am, it's just with another tight. You can't do that. You can't say, well, that's what it is, but it's not really. The Lord's ever of the case. And we have to say that all these Lashonos and all these Inyonim of Melech, no matter how high you talk, and you want to say that it's only Melech, in himself, and in the Reimim, the Atzmos B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. Ultimately, we have to say that all of these inyanim indicate that right from the very beginning, that Kaviyach, when the Eibush gave forth that first light from himself, who told him to give forth a light? Why would the Atzmos give forth light? So you want to say, well, it's a light which is kadmein kekadmusa. Pink to say he's kadmein, so the light is also kadmein. It never began kilo. But why would you call it mola? And why did the Atzmos have to have a light with itself right from the very beginning, as you might say? Kadmein kekadmusa. El chaponim mitzad madrigos. It is. And then what's this whole Indian to say, oh yes, he's mellow, but he's not, and he is, and he's not. He's really l'mayla mikol zeh, it's what he does. So we have to say that everything that happens l'mayla happens with a kavanah. I mean, cholila to say that things just happen. And when we say that no, they have no shaychus to elements and they just happen and just there, that's only legabi any real erech or shaychus mitzad erech to the whole Indian of what we call oilamos. Oh, but why are all these things happening? First of all, there's the oil coal, and then there's ishpashtus from that oil, and then the spheres are in cage, and then there's a shora b'koich, and then there's and you go further down and you get closer to the tzimtzum and the whole, and you're still b'teich atzmusay. And then even after the tzimtzum, until you get to mother's, you're still b'teich atzmusay. In b'prat masuyam, the Esesphiras Datil is also called, in a more general way, kolu, bi'atzmusay compared to biyah. And therefore we have to say that right from the very beginning, right, bi'etzem amoya kaviyochu, there was this yesodus of never. And that's the Indian, that even in the Atzmos there's this Indian of, the, how do you call it, the Rotzen HaPoshut Mitzad HaMunach Be'atzmuz of Mitzad HaAtzmuz El Rosh over in Samachay, and in the Mittler Rebbe, in, what's the name of the Mittler Rebbe's Maimah about Rosh Hashanah, it's the famous Sefer, I can't think of it. The Mittler Rebbe's got a Sefer on Rosh Hashanah. I forget her name, but you guys shouldn't forget. That's where that Lashon occurs first, and then the Rebbe Rashab develops on it in Samachay and all through the different Hemsheichim. We have to say that all of those inyonim, despite their Havdalah, and despite the fact that they're only a Gilim and a Etzem, and therefore they're only a Megaladi Etzem, of a sof kol sof, the Kavanah, and what you might call the ultimate purpose, I don't know how to use the expression, Kavanah Pnimis V'atzmiyas, which is a dying beyond any bitui, as you might say, is total that eventually it's going to be the union of Melech. And therefore, Adoin Olam implies that there's an Adoin and there's an Olam. But you just say, oh yeah, even more than that, Asher Moloch, B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra. Even before, to B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra is a description of a darga in Adoin Olam. In other words, that it all went through different madrigas, but the ultimate aim is Mola. And you can't avoid the word Mola. But what you use, the Rabbeinu Yehuda Levi, if he used the word Mola, that he wasn't just using it if he wanted to say that he didn't have any relationship to anything, he could have just said, what stuff is talking about? Doing Asher Mola B'terem. Then tell you, oh, wait a minute, it's still B'terem Kol. Elamai, that all these inyonim, so there are Kavanah, that Munach, even from Dira Lois Bora B'Tatoinim, that we don't know and it doesn't make any sense. Ayin is a call, Hezbollah, all from the very first, Iskalas Mi'atzmas is Ayin for Moloch. Moloch implies ultimately that there is going to be something. It's just that it's so Ayin Areich that the Rotzen Habayra is that it should go through different times until it becomes more better. He didn't need to do that, but he wanted to do that. And the That's the whole in here. And therefore, when we say B'terem Kol Yitzur Nivra Moloch, we just mean that's a Moloch, a dying which Eino Bo Lidei Amitius Abitu, and it's still Kol in the Etzem more than it is the meaning of Moloch. That's what it's all after. It's after that ultimate Kavan. And if these Inyanim keep going back and forth, whole time it really is still Miyuchad in him, it's Moloch. And this Rotzen from Anoah Emloich is like the real paradox of the whole, because it's the beginning of the Anoah Emloich. It's the beginning of the bitter of the Emloich, but it's still got to shine it to the Atzmias. And if I keep saying it is really, it's not, it's a Gilui of the Atzmias, for the sake of the Zuz, but it's still really Atzmias. In other words, that's the whole paradox of Elokus, that being as he is, Lamaila moved al B'tachas Abdallah, Mikol, Afu Pikein, he had this Kavanah, this whole Indian, or whatever you call it, that there should be Melech. And the far Rosh Hashanah, where you go back to the ultimate, was Shreitman Melech. As Berei, would you say Melech, then you mean there's like a ruler and a subject. I mean, you can't avoid it. No. And I mean, so you're talking about Malchus out is in Atzmus, Mamish Kol, B'Atzmus, of a mere Shrein of Melech. It's a simon that it's all one, it's all in an Echad. And I found that's the beer in this strange little moving back and forth that we see here. Before the Tzimtzum, you're sort of talking one way and then you're talking the other. And all of them seem to get together. And we're going to see in a minute that this Gilui, this Anoah Emloich, is really mitzad the Gilui of the Reim Atzmas. And because the Reim Atzmas allows itself to come out into a form of Gilui in the Inyan of the Erakolu, well, that's what ultimately causes the Rotzen of Anoah Emloich, that the one sort of obliges the other, even though they're only a form of Sibur, of a lady, he makes them a little bit more Korev than Sibur Masuvah. Sibur Masuvah is after the Tzimtzum. We see that all of these Inyanim ultimately come together, and therefore in the middle of Rebbe's Amayma in this week's Parsha, the famous Sato Echad, V'Shimcha Echad, which the Rebbe printed many years ago, but in the middle of Rebbe, and Dorit, he writes that the whole Sibur for the ganze Bria is Ki Chofetz Chesed. This is a famous old Inyan, that one of the Talmim Va'atzmim, which is given the whole Bria, the Ki Chofetz Chesed. So in some of what was written that it's become Dira V'Taktein, Nisave. And remember, this is L'mayla Mitam, it was all meant what's going to be ultimately Lamata. That's where it all begins. Of a Sof, if you say,
that contradicts Ki Chofetz Chesed?
Yeah, if you say Chofetz Chesed, then that means that the Eivishter, Be'etzem Atzmus, had a Chayfetz Pnimi, that there should be the Indian from a Malucha, a Makabah. And he should be, as it were, Meitiv, Laheitiv Lebruyov. And that's the time of the Arizal, Laheitiv Lebruyov. But that's Kila Indian Atzmi in the whole Yachas of Elokus to the Bria. We have to say that. And if, in my opinion,
it contradicts Dira B'Tachtonim.
The Chofetz Chesed and Dira B'Tachtonim are not, they're not says of one the other. No, one is like a form of a beer to the other. That's my opinion, Beregazet. And therefore, that makes sense why all these Inyonim, Dira B'Tachtonim, Melech implies Makablim, Tachtonim. Of the fact that there is such an Inyan in the Atzmas, that there is Moloch, even before he got anything going, it's called Moloch. Well, that tends to indicate that that's what he wanted. He wanted a Makabel. And as you might say, to use an expression, the Avisha couldn't be alone. He couldn't be. He didn't want to be. In other words, before anything, the Avis was the true Levade who. That's what the truth is, that's what is now also. I mean, we don't really exist, nothing exists without him. He's got this amazing plaything there. He's got this unbelievable thing. It's all the elements. And if you think I'm joking, well, it's what's written in Torah. Last week's Pasha told us. The altar right over there, it's like the Malachim and the Sorim, that they used to play with animals. You get a lion against some other animal that normally doesn't fight a lion. And that's a tremendous chiddush, and so they used to be Mesanig and Mesachik, the Malachim and Sorim. They were unfortunately cruel people. But that Indian was a chiddush lifnei. So the Rebbe said that's the whole the bria, the whole, what the Avshad looks for, the bria, that it should be bottled to him, and that's what it is. It's a game. It's like an unbelievable mishchak. It doesn't really have any materials. It's like an unbelievable mishchak. But the Avshad wants it. He wants it very much. He can't be that's the Ayin for Chiddush.
So it's clearly there has to be a folk.
Yeah, that's the Ayin for, has to be a folk. Yeah, it has to be a Dovah Chodesh. The Eibishter needed that Dovah Chodesh. He needed, and he wants it very, very badly. And we're the ones who make the mishchok. We're the ones who actually carry it out.
How does this whole thing fit in with the Seder HaShtalshelus?
Shoshush?
Basi Lagani, the Indian of Basi Lagani, the Eibishter didn't want Seder HaShtalshelus. His ultimate kavanah is for Olam Hazeh Atachta.
Yeah.
So what
do you have to bring Basi Lagani? They stayed in Periklam and Dvor. They stayed in Periklam and Dvor.
What do you need all this Seder HaShtalshelus?
That's what we said before.
Very good.
What did the Avshad need all this for? Let him just make his world and play with it. What's that for him to go to? So that's a whole and he didn't want that the mishchak should be below das. We should just do everything. We don't really have the heck of any knowledge of what we're doing. And therefore, he made the whole Seder Vishtalshelet, or Shimon Dav Kumen Ashir, and Miroi V'Yigir in the Inyan Olam Hazeh D'Shlafen. That's sehr gut for what they used to will. We wissen nicht for us. We don't know why, but I say that's what the whole Inyan von Ishtalshel is that you should know what you're doing. But that Meshuggah again with the Malachim play, the lion and the cow, or whoever they are, or the bull, or I don't know who they are, they raising it. But we know at least a certain Indian, Beis Penimis V'Atzmius Shalano, we know what is going on.
What portion of the Ibrahim note?
Then if you do it with your Bechira. That's what he wants.
How many people know about Seder Socialist? How many people know about Seder Socialist?
Well, nobody does. But they wouldn't know even what they know if they weren't Seder Socialist.
But it says in today's time.
I mean, a lot of people know. They don't know much about Seder Socialist. They know there's an Eivishter, and they know they're supposed to be bottled to him, they're supposed to do his will. Okay. In other words, that the Eivishter wanted that you should have an idea what are the issues, and that you should be boicher. We shall say what's that.
It says in today's time that it's a mitzvah Rama of Anisa.
Yeah, but you. That's why he came up with the shah about Seder Ishtalshel. Yeah, and the mitzvah Rama of Anisa. Because if you didn't have that, then you don't play the game. If you didn't have that, then you just start boring.
It's not enough just to know that Eibishter wants you to put on tefillin. You've got to know the whole Seder HaShtalshelus.
Yeah, Einachanami. So Einachanami, there's more people who know about him what you think. That's number one. And number two, those who don't, at least they do have a certain result of the Inyan Seder HaShtalshelus. And the Alter Rebbe was trying to convince them that from the result on, everybody should have some knowledge, or try at least. That's what he was trying to be. That's why he wrote the Kuntres Sachem. He's trying to be Mishatneah, even the readers of the Tanya, because they might think that the Tanya is a bit brief, so he wrote him a whole big long essay about the whole thing. You know? And that's the Nakuta. Ultimately speaking, it's these two amazing, like nuances. It's amazing. You notice how it keeps going back. Before he keeps saying, oh, it's already Shaykh Halalam. Baras Remus Atzmis, and the Tahara and the Atzmis, it's in Tahara Shaykh again to the Bat since the Tahara and the Atzmis, it's Remus Atzmis. I mean, we've gone back and forth here about 3 or 4 times, each time building it a little bit deeper and a bit broader, but that's the picture. So what I'm trying to get across here is that we're like having our cake. Like Tadeka was saying, it's only already talking about the Macabre. Tadasheni, we keep saying it's really shite to the Roim Masatzmi. Is assume that in the Roim Masatzmi is sof we're already thinking about the Macabre. Otherwise, it wouldn't be anything. V'shulma. Well, even though you can't ask that question, but you can. Ultimately speaking, it's a Deirish Bio. If I was you, and therefore the Mittler Rebbe in that Maimon, he says quite clearly that the reason for everything is Ki Chofet Chesed. And Chesed takes it, there has to be that Macabre. Adoyin Olam Hashem Moloch Terem Kovitu. Use some other word. What's a Moloch? Ain't nothing nothing was there yet. Nobody said there is going to be anything necessarily. It's not Mukhach and it's not this and that. But nonetheless, there was already this ultimate Kavana that there be the Macabre. So pretty perfect, the whole in it. When I start thinking, and so as you see, it comes down to a few basic nakudas that Kaviohu, the Etchem Atzmus, the Eivishter, already from the very beginning that he began, or he didn't even begin it, but he was always like that, as it were. He needs you, and he needs that crazy little Matthias that's called you. And you're draying around, and you're going here and you're going there, and really he's waiting for you. He's waiting for you the whole time to start doing something. And that's what the Friedrich Rebbe says in Ayom Yom. He says that everything was for alles Tisanagalavayas, and he says, Bisven Lakeman to South Socket, until when are we putting it all up? It's the same with Moshiach, Why, man, it's a Rebbe, this and something else, Chabad. The Rebbe wants Moshiach, the Rebbe wants the ultimate Tachet, the Rebbe said to Bein Shalom, it's finished. Or that Mishchach, or that play of the Esh Keneged Elokus and the whole, the Yisurim and the Golas, and that, it's all finished. Cake, song, Lachitze. The Rebbe says it's going to finish, the Chitze. When the Rebbe got Chitze, he got the Yisafis, and the guns, he's got all these. The Rebbe said, yes, you've had all that all the generations. That's what the Rebbe said. He said, my mother, Kate, song, Lachit. It's only the finish. We all just it's all crazy. So, it's all basically, when you think about it carefully, it's all the same meaning. That ultimately the Eibus is after something. And therefore he said, the Mipnei Hu Marumam Levad, his Remus Atzmei, Al Kenim Marumam is Nodem Moiseilum. It's all one link with the other because of the Remus Atzmei. Therefore his Marumam is Nazim Moiseilum. Marumam is Nazim Moiseilum is in Birchas Krishma. And that already means how the earth mamish minuta already after the Timtum, it's already shot to listen to. But for what you do it because then Atzmas is and they're all got a shaykhs. All the sin in this term calling it on here. But that's shy to that. They all Bakusha want to do. Aravia, okay. Kamarotzen don't know. Emily, who pins Raymond Atzmi, Li Esai, his pashas or me pins a Raymond be. But what is that? I know I am late. I can't run away from it. I don't know what it implies. Yeah, but he's still Roim Masatzmi because he's a horror from Roim Masatzmi. Yeah. Or he's a horror purist. He's a horror because we're going down. The lift is going down now. We're moving out towards the element. Ikin and his nasas al mamish pupuyo shaykh le'achrei atzimtum. Aval Malchus. Did I miss out anything?
No, Bechinas Malchus.
Huh?
Bechinas.
Yeah?
Bechinas Malchus. No, you didn't miss out.
I didn't miss out anything. Aber Bechinas Malchus dein Zirke Moshe Hulef Nea Tzimtzum Harize Bechinas Reimamas Atzmias Adayin Shabo Bechinas Reimamas Bietem. Aramishkos mochim acher. I am mashkos bedru samach to samach. Reima, das in Reish Nun. That's the famous drush that the Rebbe said during the Sheva Brachas of the Friedrichera. In Reish Nun time when he found the Talchat Tamim. And I remember, dort steht klar. Over there it's written, Adayin Olam Hashem Allah, this is the Remus Atzmias. Before there's any shaita, and then I know it's written over there in a certain passage, also a similar type of hierarchy to what we see here, with different lashonos and different piyurim. The doigish over there's on different pratim. But this is the picture. This is the general picture. Says the Rebbe, that's the Inyan. Even what we can say in a general way is that the fact that Malchus, no matter where it is and how it expresses itself, its Inyan is Reimamas, B'Havdolah, and that's the etzem definitional characteristic of Malchus. Well, that's mitzad, the Inyan of Malchus, how it is Shor Sha'arishan, that it's really just Reimamas Atzmius of the etzem. And therefore all the other madrigas, all kushurim bazeh, even though one element becomes a sibba to the other, a so-called so, they all have a certain shaykhs to that inyan, because be'etzim shosha it's inyan from Reima Masa'atzmiyas. Therefore, wherever Malchus comes, it's got a trace of this inyan of Havdolah, Sure, that's the pure Adkan. Now the Rebbe comes along with a whole new Oidzois is like a new svara, a new inyan. He said, Oidzois, the bechinas harotzim, da no emloich, hu shebo alideis galus, the bechinas harimamas, be'etzem, the bechinas atzmus ha'oyer. Up to now, we've just been saying, since it's a ha'ora from that Reimamas, therefore ha'ora always has in itself, therefore it's got in itself, Ayin the Reimamas Atzmiyas. Now he's going to say even more than that, even more than the fact that it's just a ha'ora, and therefore it carries with it, or the Inyan of the Atzmiyas, the Reimamas Atzmiyas of the Uyer HaKolul. He's now going to say that on the even more than that, that because there's a gilui of that Reimamas out is kolul bi'etzim, or that gilui that brings and that causes brings with it that mamela there's a gilui of ano emlik. In other words, that if it weren't for the fact that Reimamas etzim, in other words, we've been learning up to now that the Reimamas etzim stays where it is, and just a ha'oram who carries all that we need. Okay, now the Rebbe is saying a new idea. He says, no, that Reimamas Atzmi actually moves out of its place and it comes into Gilui. And Alidei, what it creates, as you might say, this tremendous momentum of a Isgalus of its own Reimamas Atzmi, and that causes through a certain link, which we'll see as we go along, well, that causes almost not so much b'derech ha'ora, but it causes like almost b'derech mamela, derech mamutza kol shehi. It causes ayin in these galas of the. In other words, if it weren't for the. In other words, that to get over such a jump from the Reimamas Atzmis into the Reimamas Atzmi, how he's already a no emloi, you've got to have that the Reimamas Atzmis itself should push the situation. In other words, it's got to be like a, to use an expression, how do you say, it's got to be a motivation, not a motivation, what's the expression? An initiative. There's got to be an initiative from the Reimamas Atzmiyas to actually take action, and that brings about the Inyan at the Ano Emily. Of it just with Ha'ora, that's not enough beer. Because the Inyan from Ha'ora is just a Inyan from Ha'ora, Ad Kedikach, that it could carry with it the immediate Atzmiyas that we want in Ano Emily. The Reimamas Atzmi should be mamish miskale. That vice is because Reimamas is azach that it's so moved out that even in Ha'ora it can't really express itself. Therefore we've got to have that it actually comes out of its Havdolah and gets into, and it actually pushes, and what you might call it votes for Ano Emlik and sees that it happens. In other words, it's through a moving into his galas of something which is Betachlis Havdolah, that brings me about the Ano Emlik. And that that tends to indicate that it's a drastic move on the part of the Rebishter. It's mamish a deliberate move of something which normally can't be. And yet, nonetheless, he does it in order to get this whole thing moving. And that's what we're going to see as we go along now. We'll just begin it quickly. He said, Ayin hu, dehina yedua de paprotius, yesh b'zeh gimel madreges. B'finas hamalucha ha-klula be'etzem, even in the whole inner of the malucha, it's still called in the Kedem HaTzimtzum, there's three madreges. Ha'alef b'chinas hamalucha kamoishi hi klula bi'atzmusei, she'ena b'chinas hamshocha v'gilui, cloud, like we pointed out, b'terem kol yitzu niv, v'zeu b'chinas atzmus ha'oher, in other words, the etzem ha'oher, mamish ha'kol bi'atzmusei. והבייס, שזה פה לעיר, והבייס, מה שעולה ברצונו ענו, אין מויך, והוא מבחינת יש פשטס העולה מבחינת עצם העולה, והגימול, איך שמשום זה, עולה ברצונו להאצל. In other words, that משום זה is a indicative of a sibur, like we said before, it's only a sibur, משום זה, and here we see a chiddush, that there's a inyan from Rotzen lahatzil, even Kedem HaTzimtzum, there's a certain geta already in Rotzen lahatzil. Yeah, in other words, Ono Emlich is still a Havdolah Dika level, Gabi, this level, which is still Kedem HaTzimtzum. But that's a little bit Deirish Biur, actually, on what level does that occur? But we have to say that that's the what we call the Alois HaRotzen. And the Alois HaRotzen, Kedem HaTzimtzum, is already Koyol Protim. So we could say that that's the union of Rotzen Livrei Kedem HaTzimtzum. But Ilo Anoa Emlich is a much more cloristic union. However, he said that's a union for Nishpashtes, of the Ha'ora from the Etzem Ha'or. And then he goes on to say that we find that B'kol Koyach, we find that there's a union of three madregas mishugs there in the gill of every main koyach in nefesh, and then we're going to see Lamaila kachu b'inyan hamalucha, and then he's going to say, but in order for you to get to that middle point, which is what we're trying to be mafarish yet, but I don't even know anyway, there has to be something. It's so ein aroich in befrat in the inyan from malucha, which is playing with Reimamus the whole time. There has to be another, it's a clicking, as you might say, in between the two, and that's what we're going to see Amir Hashem in the coming beer, that there's a further amazing initiative, as I called it before, on the part of the Reimamus Atzmius Mamish. And that brings about the inyan from Anoim like Be'emtza. Good. So what that exactly has to do with Zion Kislev, we have to work out now. What it's exactly got to do with it. Kislev is Beklava a Chodesh, what L'chol HaDeyes. And L'chol HaInyonim, everybody else, the Kislev is a Chodesh, L'mayla mi a Rogil, L'mayla mi Hateva, L'mayla mi Kol HaInyonim. And Mamela, we have to have the Iskalas. We're singing about Iskalas Reimus Atzmi. And the Reimus Atzmi takes an initiative. And that's what we're going to see here. We have to say that the Reimus Atzmi will take an initiative. I mean, how long can we, how long can we carry on? Even with the Mesilas Never, and even with L'mayla Mi'atev, and even with all the Inyonim. Yeah, I think that Yidden can be said to be Mekayim these Inyonim pretty much B'Yiddah. I feel in the Torah's Achrein. And we have the right to say, Eivishter, Reimus Atzmis can take an initiative.
You mentioned the Mittler Rebbe a few times.
Yeah?
You mentioned the Mittler Rebbe a few times.
Yeah, we're coming up now to well, I had the truth is that I had a certain little kavanah mentioning because towards the end of the week it's Tess and you.
Do we have to bring in Tess and
I don't know. I haven't had the time to think about it yet.
There's a program every Thursday night.
That's the point. I forgot.
I mean, there'll be something. I'm sure there'll be something.
But will you be for bringing?
I don't know.
Initiative, Rabbi. Initiative, Rabbi.
No, what I'm thinking, initiative. What I'm thinking, initiative.